Sorry about that. All right, let me try to welcome to the afternoon session. Let me try to repeat what I tried to communicate before. I don't want for you guys to feel that you have to come in the morning, learn a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of new concepts in the afternoon. It's a studio and it's a drawing class, and I do want you to be able to exercise and have time to perform some of the things that you learned, or were made to understand in the morning's section, so we have time to do in the afternoon. So my intention is to allow time in the afternoon section for you guys to do some work. If there's anything in particular that somebody has questions about, naturally ask me. I will answer questions. So I'm hoping the afternoon turns into more of a sort of a Q&A and a time for you guys to do some work. But I will introduce some of the things that we're trying to do, but anything that you see me present to you here, I will repeat on next Tuesday's class in the morning section. Is that fair? Does that sound reasonable to you guys? Because I don't want you to come in here agonizing about, what did I miss? What did I do? Of course, the class is being recorded, but I recognize the need to. And when we did the class in person, face to face, that's what we did. We spent a lot of time in class drawing. So I'm going to describe the overall goals of the thing is to get a drawing like this and transfer it somehow to a piece of white paper, preferably a high quality piece of white paper, right? One of the first things you do, and I believe that it's going to be sufficient for us to look at this drawing. This is a drawing that traces all parallel lines to the horizon, to a point on the horizon, which is where my eye level is, where I'm looking. Think of me aiming the camera at the middle of that door. And the green line you see going across, that's a horizon line. And in this single point perspective, all the lines that form the edges that are perpendicular to my line of sight and parallel to each other converge at that point. Let me save this as a PDF. Now the image you have may or may not be this. You have the option to choose whatever one you want. The ones we're looking at are historical and they're older. This is what the library looks like more now. So I'm going to save this as something when the computer lets me. You guys did great work today, incidentally. And I'm going to email that to everybody. Okay. That woman who's sitting in that chair in the middle of the picture was very patient with me. I took lots of pictures over there, and she's probably thought I was stalking her or something. And I explained, I said, I'm doing this for class. So she was very patient. So you all have a copy of that image where I'm tracing lines. Okay. If you can, download it, have it handy, just so, or and embed it, sear it in your memory somehow, so you kind of understand. But I'm going to sit down and draw what I mean about finding the vanishing point in the horizon in the image. And I'm going to use the image that the black and white image that I shared with you guys. Theoretically, you could use an image of whatever you wanted if you could do this exercise with something different. I don't think anybody's tried to do it with something different, but I'm trying. The point is a generic one. It is a point of looking at an enclosed space in perspective and then figuring out how to transfer that to some white paper and then to embellish that using a hatch, a pattern of our own invention using a pen and ink. So the new share is going to be this. Okay, now you see my wonderfully messy top. So working with an image like this, what we're trying to do is determine the structure of this. So the first thing I'm going to take is a straight edge. Does everybody have one of these or some kind of straight? You probably used it for some other class, right? Preferably, you could use a ruler, but it's best to have something that you can see through. And the triangles you use all the time. So if you don't have one, try to get a hold of one as soon as possible. Let me get another instrument. So nobody feels left out in case you don't have one of these. But conceivably, you could use a straight edge like this, just a little more difficult not to be able to see beneath it. So one of the first things I'm going to do here is figure out what are the lines that are parallel to each other, but perpendicular to my picture plane. Picture plane being the flat surface at the very back of that drawing that I'm looking at. Now I'm going to sketch it for you because I have rehearsed this so many times. Maybe I'll do it with a darker pen. At the back of the drawing, in here, is an element that's parallel to my picture plane. That is, I'm looking at it orthographically. I'm looking at it straight on. I can't tell from the picture whether or not it has an oculus, a round circle in the middle of it, but let's pretend it does, like in the picture that I showed you. So it might have something like that. Now what I want to do is identify the horizon line. How do I know where the horizon line is in this picture? Somebody want to guess?
Where like all the vanishing points like meet, I guess.
That's right. That's what happens. So where exactly is that relative to me physically? I'm standing here looking in that direction in this picture.
So your eye line.
Good. That's exactly right. I'm way back here somewhere with my silly haircut and glasses that you can see from, and that's about what I'm looking at. And if that were in front of me, maybe my head is about this big compared to what I'm looking at now, right? And my eyes are here, and that's my horizon line. It's my eye level. So it's about as tall as me, less whatever the distance from my head to my eyes. Assuming that when I took the picture, my camera was at eye level, right? Some people do this kind of picture, that kind of picture, that kind of picture, but this is static, sort of looking straight ahead of that. That's my horizon line. If I'm looking slightly to one side, the center of my vision would be slightly to the left. This picture, it looks like the center line is about dead center in this picture. Similar as it was it is in this photograph. I'm looking at about eye level, which for me will be, let's see, 7 feet less. Just kidding, right? I'm not 7 feet tall. I wish I were 7 feet tall. 5'8" or so less, whatever my eye level. So that's about what, and it's important to understand the concept of the horizon line when you're looking at any kind of visual, any kind of physical space. I did promise I'm not going to lecture forever, so the scope of this class is going to be, we're going to do the best we can to set up our converging lines. That's what the goal of the class is. I'm going to give you all the time you need to do it because it's that important. Okay. If I were to take a line from the center here and go in that direction and in that direction, and if I were somewhere over here, I might be looking at right? I don't expect you to be able to do this, but let me know if you don't understand what you're watching me do. Do you see what I've just done with respect to what's going on here? Right? This isn't a magic trick. This is in order to illustrate, okay, what lines are parallel or perpendicular to that picture plane, which is the back of that. That means that the edges of that capital, if I draw lines through that, they're going to converge at the horizon to a single point. So the lines that form that are going to converge to a single point. How do I set up my picture so I can start to do that? It's pretty simple. Now that I understand that's what has to happen, and it gets easier with each subsequent line. I take my picture. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use my see-through straight edge. Next Tuesday, we're going to begin with this same exercise, and we'll spend the day transferring the photo. We'll get this thing done. All right. So we're all in the same boat. We're all going to land on shore together. I'm tracing the edge, in this case, the bottom edge of those capitals. The line that they form can be traced back to my picture plane. Now my horizon line, which I haven't identified yet. Can somebody tell me in this picture what gives me a clue as to where I would draw a horizontal line? I wish I could zoom in on this picture, but I can't with what I'm doing.
Is it where the building in the background has like a darker line that's kind of in the middle of it?
Like that?
No, more toward the right, like where the top of the tree hits.
It would be if that were a straight line, but that's actually off to a distance, and it's slightly
Slanted.
It's slightly slanted, but look at what I'm looking at here. Watch where I put these things. You see that? You see that? And you see that. Do you all agree that that line, the line that forms the edge of these stone panels, should converge to that horizon, right? So what if I did that? Drew a line through there. Let's find another one. I'm looking at the wall on my left over here, right? There's lots of them. There's one right about there. I drew out on my page there. They're not always going to intersect right in the middle. Okay, a couple things. I'll reveal first off, if I found a line on this wall that was horizontal, that would be my horizon. Do you see how below the horizon, the lines converge upwards? Above the horizon, lines converge downwards. So my horizon, and by definition, the horizon, the vanishing point is on the horizon where all these lines intersect. So it's going to be at that point a horizontal line. Let me get a slightly darker pen. Don't want to clutter this too much. Of course, I drew it crooked. Well, slightly crooked. So that's my horizon. I'll try to keep this paper in the same place by taping it. Can I tape it? Do I have drafting dots over there? Oh, dynamite. Thank you. Drafting dots. They hold things in place. How do I get them out of here? Oh, I got it. Never mind. That's where I was drawing. So if I go beyond the limits of the page. What other line obviously converges to that horizon in this picture? I'll give you a hint. It looks like it supplies electricity to a bunch of lights that haven't yet been installed. Right? when you think of it, you're looking at the center of a very symmetrical set of cross vaults. We'll talk about later exactly what that means. So what other lines are obvious? Once you start laying down lines, it becomes easy because you start to recognize, oh yeah, there's this, there's that. Even though I can't see the whole thing, right? There's this, whatever that is. There's that. There's some lines up here. So what I'm starting to see there's a series of intervals. I don't expect you to do this freehand as I'm doing it now. I've rehearsed this for 20 years so that when you do it for 20 years, you could probably do this with your eyes closed. All I'm trying to emphasize here is that you guys understand what it is that you're looking at. You don't have to draw all of it, but it's going to be easier than this. Why is it going to be easier than this? You don't have to draw these lines in red either. Probably it might be easier to read them if they were in black, right? Now what I'm able to do is outline what I'm looking at. The top of the columns follow a different line, and then I can start to sort of work inside of those things. As you get much smaller, these become a bit less distinct. Now, the columns themselves are not straight up and down. They're not perfectly vertical. Are you guys studying architectural history or art history now? Art history? No?
In art, I took art history last year, and yeah, we studied columns.
Okay, you familiar with a term called entasis?
No.
So the Parthenon in Greece, you know the Parthenon in Greece, it's a Greek temple at the Acropolis. In order to visually compensate for somebody standing in front of a column looking up, for the tapering that would happen because of perspective, they tried to visually compensate. So what they did was they bowed outwards the columns and make them slightly fatter. That's called entasis. It was amazing that they did this so many, many years ago. Are you going to get tested on whether or not you know what the word entasis means? No. Did I tell you a week ago that you picked the best profession in the world to join? Yes, because it is rich with history and details. And strategies, design strategies like this that visually compensate to make things beautiful, that are pretty amazing, that people thought of hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Um, thousands of years ago, right? Parthenon, 300, 500 BC, something on that order. Anyway, so when you draw these columns, you're not going to draw a cylinder like that. You're drawing something that has a slight bow to it. And that bow is called entasis. That's the term. So, in order to more easily transfer it to the trace paper, what you're going to do is adulterate the picture, maybe to the point where some of these things are obvious, I wanted to save the curves for another time, but where you recognize a regular pattern, you don't have to draw every nook and cranny of that capital. But enough of it that we're able to reproduce it here. I'm just adding the marks for contrast, just so that you guys can see what I'm doing. You may want to keep this as clean a line drawing as possible. Then finally, the problem of the cross vaults. I'm going to show you what I've drawn here. So what happens when you're looking at a single point perspective, and it's hard to tell in this picture, but if I draw lines over from, say, the top of the arches, do you see what I've done there? For instance, here it corresponds with this pilaster. There's a similar element on the wall that corresponds to the column over there. So if I were looking at it straight on, let me open up a photograph that will show what I mean by that. I'm going to share another screen. Okay, so these are some drawings I made some years ago. See what's going on with this, where there are two columns and an arch. the crossbow rises up to the middle of the midpoint between the two. These are the corresponding elements to the capitals that are holding up those arches. All these pictures will be posted on Blackboard as well, if you want to look at them. So don't worry if we don't get directly what I'm describing right now, but you will be able to recognize it in the drawing. So in the drawing, in the photograph, that element on this side corresponds to this column and reaches forward to that point. Then on that side, that reaches forward. Then from this column, that same arch, because of the projection, reaches back to that point from the same corresponding. It's really hard to see here, but it does something like that. Then you go to the next one, reaches forward. The next one reaches back. If I were to be able to see this one, it would do something like that. So that's something of the structure that you're looking up above there. Is it important that you get this precisely, actually dead on? No, it isn't. Because all we want to do is to be able to generate something here. And if you get a sense for the rhythm of the thing, forward, back, back from the next column, forward from the next one. You just want enough of that. If I drew lines over these openings, I don't really even need to, but I could. Then finally what I have, I'm not doing it very carefully right now, right? You probably noticed that. Finally what you have something that looks kind of like this. Hopefully you don't have to do thick and thin lines as I did. Preferably you have you could draw some of these elements that you saw on the wall. Oh, there it is. Looks like there are some arches against this wall, but they're very severe. But there's enough of a drawing there. To form the beginning of that system, then we got to transfer this trace to paper. And I'm going to remind you again that I'm going to repeat all this on Tuesday next. And the way I transfer that to trace is by drawing on the back of it some pencil. A little bit of pen, as soft a lead as you can find. And then repeating the outline. You could use a ballpoint pen. I need something a little bit sharper. Let's see that one. Sometimes students use a ballpoint pen.
Charcoal?
Do you have charcoal? Huh? Yeah, I just don't. The soft lead pencil would be preferable. Just so that we deal with pencils. 2B lead might be a little bit heavy, like a 4B or a 6B pencil. Oh, I moved this. Uh-oh. This could be trouble. See if I have it there. Thanks. The idea that you have enough of the drawing in there and then knowing what you know about it, you can complete some of that. And these are the drawings that we later go in with a pen. So this is our good paper. And because we've rehearsed the shape, the pattern, right?
Professor, I have a question.
Yeah.
So my printer doesn't really work, but if I want to print off more of these, do you know if we can do that in the library?
Yeah, you can do it in the library. You can do it on the what I can do is print them for you this week and leave them on the 10th floor at the Sawyer building.
Oh, that would be perfect.
Yeah, I had intended to print a bunch of these and mail them to you guys. But I mean,
Okay.
you get the general idea. What I wanted to basically describe, I'm not going to go on about any more stuff right now, but I wanted to give you an overview of the process. And imagine you could do this. It doesn't have to be with a library. It could be something else that you like, that you find in a magazine. I mean, there are other ways of transferring
And is this library that we're drawing close by? Because me and some of the other girls were kind of wanting to like go see it in person if it's open.
I don't know that they're letting people into the courtyard. The last I checked, they were not.
Okay.
But if you call them or find out and let me know, because I would like to get in there. What I wanted to do was do a 3D scan of the space and then put it up on the computer for people to look at. Right?
So what's the name of this library again?
It's the Boston Public Library at Copley Square.
Okay.
And then what you do here is invent some kind of pattern. That persuades me that I'm looking at an enclosed space. So you may want to vary the tone in between these. Maybe get dark. Yeah. Maybe get darker as you get to the back. And then the very back of this, maybe the darkest part. If you're more comfortable drawing directly onto the paper from, from a sketch of the lines, you could do that as well. I'm not going to look for every single column, right? It isn't necessary to do that. What's necessary is to persuade the viewer that you're inside this array of columns. I think there's something like that going on. It continues up there. And that part of the space now, what I'm doing has no particular rhyme or reason. What students have done in the past is basically just set up this framework and then invent some kind of mark. You have the first 4 weeks of the semester to work on this. Don't freak out at like that you can't follow along with this. I wanted for you guys to see the process. And I'm not being very careful about it right now. We can do this more carefully. So what will you need to do this? I'm going to say ballpoint pen, pencil, drawing pencil with soft leads, (4B to 8B), 8B being the softest. Straight edge, clear, so you can see through it. 12 inches at least so that you can get across the page with it. Ink pens. You can use a micron. They're a little pricier. I like these guys. These are Pilot. Fine, extra fine. Trace. I find it convenient to have sheets of trace. These are sheets. 9 by 12. If you prefer to work with rolls of paper, but I think the sheets are convenient. If you want something a little tougher than the trace, because you can use vellum, it's a little tougher to see through. And then high quality paper. White paper. This will get us started.
Paper, do you recommend a certain size
Go ahead, say that again.
for the paper? Do you recommend
Paper.
size of paper?
Yeah, I wouldn't get anything 11 by 17 at the outside, because you end up drawing usually a 9 by 12 or less. So let me show you. I know I showed you this before. Never understand how you copy things to OneDrive, then you try to open them and then it says, oh, it's got to download it. But that's what we got now. Okay. So some of these pages are not oriented. Can I rotate the page? So here's what some people did. You can see this is significantly abbreviated, right? You go get really creative with the scribble. I outsmarted myself rotating. There's a more controlled mark, but you're going to invent something. You're going to invent a mark. See how this one zooms into a corner? That's perfectly all right to do. Let me make sure before I do anything else that I transfer these to Blackboard so that you have them there. Okay. So that's up on Blackboard along with other images of the library. Do you see that? Little dots. Do you see how little of the drawing you need in the background in order to create this composition? See how the students left out one side completely, but still manages to create the illusion of depth. These are much better than the drawing I just made, obviously, right? Because I spent, now later on, after we do the black and white, the ink drawings on white paper, we're going to work on colored paper. So at some point, you're going to want to acquire some sheets of tone paper, either gray or brown, like this, and black and white Prismacolor pencils. These are the studies that you guys did. Now, looking at these, you guys did a much better job this morning at these than any of the drawings that I see now. We can do some time studies later. Again, we did these in the field. I'm not sure how successful that is, but it certainly is different, right? Some are more careful than others. Okay. Let's break for 10 minutes and I'll let you guys work for the rest of the time and you can ask me some questions. I know I hit, again, let me remind you that it's my intention to review all this stuff afterwards with you guys, beginning again on Tuesday, so that we'll go over orchestrating, assembling this in the morning session and letting you work on it in the afternoon. See you in about at about 6:05. Some of these are more careful than others, right?
Professor, could I ask you another question?
Yeah.
When you covered the trace paper and pencil first, when you went over it again in pencil to make it like go through to the page, were
Yeah.
you drawing on the side that's covered in pencil or the back side of it?
The backside. So I turned this up. Yeah, good question. I apparently didn't make that clear. Let me share. Yeah. In order to transfer, I found a couple of the pencils that I use, like a 4B. Oh,
Okay, I think I have that one
yeah,
somewhere.
a 4B, a 5B, or an 8B lead. So you draw on the back. If you have charcoal, I don't know, if you guys took foundation classes and you have charcoal, that would work as well.
Okay.
But as much of it, you cover near the lines. I also posted a picture that's a little closer to the ones that I showed you. Let me show you on Blackboard where that is. So you might want to start with that instead. Do you see this picture? It's on Blackboard. It says Courtyard image for drawing. This one just has a few columns. One of the reasons I didn't like it is a little washed out, but that's closer to the image that a lot of the students used in the other drawing. Again, I don't care if you use that one or not. It's funny. I always end up coming back to that picture. This might be best. I think when we start again on Tuesday, we'll probably look at this. For purposes of what we did today, I wanted to just acquaint you guys with the idea that that those lines converge at a point on the horizon. There's also a drawing. I'm going to put it on Blackboard and then open it up. I find Blackboard confusing, but image. Let's see what happens. Stupid program. Let's try file. So what I did with this drawing, I think you might find this helpful. What I've done is sort of draw outlines of some. Can you see this? A picture with a bunch of lines on it in color.
Yes.
That's what you're looking at? Okay, so that's up on Blackboard now. And what I've done here is actually drawn in Illustrator, another program that I'm going to hopefully teach you something about later in the semester, sort of outline what the shapes are that I'm asking you to recognize. You could use this image as well if you wanted to. All I care right now is that you get the general idea. It's not important that you were able to do any of this. But what I want you guys to do is to be able to look at an image, know your point of view, identify whether, tell that is a single point perspective, and where the lines converge and what the shapes are and how they're transformed as I'm looking at them. So if you understand the underlying geometry, you should be able to basically create scaffold. You're just laying out a scaffold for the drawing. Any questions, or anybody want to show me their work? Or I'm not. This went on longer than I wanted it to. I apologize for that, but don't worry about it. We'll review it next week, and there's no homework between now and then. So
I have a question.
yes.
So is this just like a practice, like before we start like the final, or how are we doing this?
What you're doing right now today?
Yeah.
Yeah, today this is just practice. This is just to acquaint yourself with the exercise.
Okay.
Then on Tuesday, what I'll do is I'll start this anew. Maybe I'll use this drawing. I call everything a drawing, by the way. I call a photograph a drawing, anything that I mark up. So we're basically want to lay out on white paper something that you can mark up in pen and ink in 3 different ways. So yes, this is a warm-up, and next week we'll be starting the actual drawing. Does anybody want to show me anything that they started, or is it too early to do that? That's up to you guys.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
When we finally have it on the paper, is it
Yeah.
supposed to be this faint or do I need a different pencil? I don't even know if you can see that.
Let me see. Let me stop sharing. Oh boy, I can barely see anything. If you can see it, that's fine. But I suspect, can you show me the pencil you used?
It's 6B.
Wow, that's a very soft lead. So
I do have a really light hand, so maybe that's the issue.
so I'm going to suggest that you use like a ballpoint pen and try to bear down a little bit. How do you know that you have a light hand? Have you been told that?
I assume. I'm also in a drawing class right now, and that's some feedback I got.
Okay. That's okay. I mean, it's nice to have a sensitive hand, but for this particular exercise, you're going to have to bear down a little bit. So you might want to work with a ballpoint pen or something that has some traction. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Could I show you mine?
Yes, please. That's good. I think that came across pretty well. You don't need, see, all the circles and all that stuff. You're not going to be drawing them in this.
Okay.
But that's cool that you did that. So what you want in this drawing, though, is that you've identified perfectly where the capitals go. Now you want to just circumscribe the ellipses at the top and at the bottom, and then negotiate that with a entosis shaped column.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's got some promise. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead. I don't know what I did, but when somebody talks, it's somehow. Go ahead.
So I haven't, here, let me pull this up. I haven't put it on paper yet,
All right.
but I have like the trace done now because I redid it from the first one I did. So that's what I have. Hopefully you can see that.
That's wonderful. I don't think I ever did a drawing that well.
Thank you.
So you may want to, Skylar, if you don't mind, scan it and email it to me, and I'd like to share it with the class to show. I can't believe you did that in the amount of time that we did. But
Yeah,
that's
of course.
Can you hold it up one more time?
Yeah.
Yeah. With that drawing, you can make anything, right? So now the trick is going to be to get some lead behind there and transfer that over. So pick a selected part. That's going to be very successful. Well done.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We're going to go through all this all over again next week, because this is the first time I've ever tried to communicate how to do this drawing online, completely online. Last year, we were in person for most of the semester until March. But you have the advantage that I actually recorded all my lectures from last year. So I am going to make that available to you guys as well. All right, guys, have a happy and safe weekend. And if you need me for anything, call or write. The phone number there, leave a message that's on my email, and you can write to me. And if there's something you need to me, I will respond anytime. All right? Thank you. Be well. Be safe this weekend or this week. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.